Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Sweet Home Season 2, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, turns out things kind of went down the way I thought they did. We do have a time skip. Just with everything set up the way it was, Hyun ended up being turned into stone, the survivors being all lumped together with the crow platoon. I'm like, and just where everything is, I'm like, feels like the perfect scenario for a time skip. So it's been less than a year, but only by a little bit. I'd say we're probably roughly in like June or July of 2021 at this point in time. And so I love that the first person we opened up with is Eon Yu. She was kind of resting, and then she kind of goes back. We see she's a pariah amongst the survivors because they've obviously, it's been a year. They've kind of worked out a system. Civilians don't go outside. They're not the ones that do the expeditions of exploring, picking up stuff. They used to, but now only the crows do it, which has led to some level of contention amongst some of the survivors and the crows that you do that. But it's like, it's for your own protection. I guess maybe it specifically has to do with Eon Yu's circumstances, because we find out she's labeled as a murderer. We find out who the person is that she murdered. It was, I guess, his name is Ginam. I guess he was Chief G's husband. From what we saw in that flashback, it looks like he was turned into a monster and she killed him. It could have been a thing of maybe he died first and then came back as a monster type of situation, because we've seen that does happen sometimes when you're not fully dead beforehand and you come back as a monster. Could be that, but I don't know if it's a situation of no one believes her when she says that, or maybe she just never felt the need to explain everything, because maybe if she explained what happened, because she was probably out on her own. It seems like she's periodically going off on her own, and as the episode progresses, we find out why it is, because some time ago she was rescued by someone and she believed it was her brother, Eon Hyuk. She thinks that, like, oh, you're still alive, you're avoiding me. What's interesting, though, is that never crossed my mind. My immediate thought was, well, it's got to be Hyun. But, like, how did he get out of the petrification he was left in last episode? Because Hyun, so far, is the only person we've seen, because from what looked like when she got rescued, because she was kind of passing out at the time, so she didn't see, but it looked like a wing, and Hyun's the only one so far we've seen his, like, monsterization manifest in that way, in the form of, like, a wing with, like, the sharp, like, serrated, like, feathers like that. So my immediate assumption was it was Hyun, and we know that him and Eon Yu had a connection, so he would take interest in, maybe he just doesn't want to be around him because he's losing so much of himself. But it does seem like there is a possibility it is Eon Hyuk. But like I said, my money was on Hyun. It never crossed my mind that it was her brother. So, but he might be avoiding. If it's Hyun, why is he avoiding her? I mean, I guess the world being in the state it is, because we have no idea what. Because like everything seems to be kind of status quo to some extent. And like, yes, the Crow platoon as well as the survivors kind of have their own system, but you'd expect it's been like a year. So what is Woomion been doing this entire time? Like, for him to just be quiet, guess been slowly building up his forces, because, well, it seems like they might be at least the last large group of survivors. We don't know if word's gotten out about them chilling out at, like, the stadium, which was supposed to be the shelter, is the shelter. They're just in what it remains of it. It's actually multiple stadiums. I talked about it as if it's just one, but there's one stadium here, and then there's like another one relatively close by. I guess like it seems maybe they're connected in some regard, but they look like two giant separate buildings. There's a like good bit of distance between them, but the fact is that they haven't really been, like, it's been almost a year and nothing's, like, they haven't been completely overrun. Must mean he's just like, yeah, I'm letting you do your thing. I don't care enough. I'm gathering my forces. I'm doing my thing, leading the neo-humans, but, you know, you're just fodder out there to be, you know, food hunted down by the monster. So for that, I'm just going to let you do your thing. I'm not going to go out of my way to hunt you down. You'll die eventually, because this is our world, not yours anymore. So I'm sure, like, from a villain standpoint, that could be his justification. I mean, like I said, he might see them as not worth wiping out. It's like, yeah, like, why go through all that trouble? It's going to be more of a nuisance. But my point was also, we don't know if any other pocket groups are still alive. I mean, there might be some survivors scattered around, but a large group like this of, like, hundreds of people gathered the way it is at the stadium. The Crows seem to be running the majority of everything. because I think Chief G is the person that we saw lead the crows. And like, oh, when they met up and it's like, oh, she's like, follow me. How many people are with you? He's like 400. That was probably like, I don't know if she had already gathered up some survivors or whether those were people that were all, maybe she was there in the shelter ahead of time, and maybe like that group of 400 met up with her group, which maybe there was already like a good chunk of them. But it's definitely in the hundreds at least all across the board, whether it's that 400 only or whether it's like 400 plus in whatever group she was a part of. But yeah, she handles things on her side, and her and the crows kind of have like this thing of like she does her side of things in the grand scheme of things. She's kind of the engineer, so she works on stuff like this episode. She's leading a group to fortify the outer walls, but the crows run the whole operation, which once again leads to some dissent amongst people because they think like, hey, Chief G, you're the one that kind of brought them in, and yet you get relegated to the background while they kind of get to run things. We saw previously how some of the military acted when they were in that position, and we see that obviously it's here. Power, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and so some people on the team. One guy in particular that's kind of power tripping. That's Young. That was the little boy. He was like trying to get the baseball and had his hand cut. Because I think that was Miss Han, not unless I'm mistaken, but I could be. Because the groups aren't really together. Because we meet Glasses guy. Finally learned his name, Seong. We saw him kind of doing his own thing, so none of the group is together anymore. I guess they just I mean, hey, we only got one episode into this time skip, so we don't know how often they meet up. Granted, they're in a tough position because anyone connected to Eonu ends up kind of in the, oh, you're on the shit list because of their connection. Because Seong was like, no, I'm not even related to her. It's like, yeah, but by association, her crimes kind of fall on you because he's trying to get a job from Chief G, but she's like, the people there are being like, why would I help you? Even her daughter, who is kind of like, I think that's so interesting that she just because she doesn't seem to pay her daughter any mind. She lets her daughter do whatever. It's like, right, you don't work. I guess in her mind, maybe it's like a thing of, yeah, go and continue being useless. I don't really have any purpose for you. Because she was like, Mom, and her mom just brushed past her. So I guess it's a thing of you're a disappointment and I won't even acknowledge you. We don't know what that's all about. But that's definitely like her kid. They also have someone else staying with them, which is kind of like a friend of hers. It doesn't seem like that's like a sibling. It's like, no, it seems like a friend who's taking advantage of the situation. Because I guess being tight with... Because I think she's specifically living with Chief G and her daughter. So she's able to kind of benefit from that. I don't know what to quite make of it. Once again, there's a lot we're jumping into in the middle of all of this. So... we get introduced to that storyline with what was that character's name? Was it June G? It might have been. Or is it no, June Il? It's June Il. That storyline ended up being like very like sad and heartwarming at the same time because he wants to go out there, but the military, they get to decide who goes out and who doesn't. It's like, okay, if you want to go out on your own, but don't expect us to go with you. Because if we're not out there to protect you because you're not entitled to our protection. So if if you like this arrangement, you like how like taking, if you want to, because you're taking your life here for granted. So if you want to, go out there, but we're not going to back you up. So we'll throw you to the wolves. You can stand on your own 2 feet if you have an issue with things being the way they are, or you can shut the hell up and kind of enjoy what's kind of created here. So that guy in particular was his name was like I can't remember his name. He's the dude in the blue shirt. He's like one of the 2 main dudes we're following this episode. The ones you were following Eonu. But like I said, even Junil wanted to be a part of them because he wants to be able to go out and find medicine for his mom. Because his mom was like slapping him. Was like, you missed roll call. What were you being an idiot for? Don't go off on your own. He's like, Mom, you're sick. The fact is, you're in so much pain that you grit your teeth. That your teeth are starting to fall out. He's got them collected, and you're just like, that's heartbreaking. He just wants to take care of her, and for her, she's like, I shouldn't have survived until now, but the only reason why I have is because I've been so scared to leave my son alone, and now I'm worried. Like, I am like, she's dying from cancer. It reappeared, and she's like, a couple months ago it really kicked up, and now she's got this like pain in her stomach. She feels like her end is near, but she doesn't want to leave her son alone, and she's scared to leave him alone, and because that not wanting to leave him alone has kept her going this entire time. But now it's like that might not be enough anymore. So she's worried about leaving her son alone. And obviously this all really hits for Chan Young, which he's a good guy, so he wants to like help out in whatever way he can, but there's only a limited amount he can do. Because when he came across her, she was in pain. He gave her some aspirin. So, but yeah, sadly, Junil ends up following those two rapscallions who are following Eonyu because Chief G gave them a job. Because it's like, right, Eonyu leaves and comes back all the time, and somehow, despite being on her own, manages to survive. The main dude is kind of like, oh, Chief G wants us to kill her, and it's like, no, she just told us to spy on her, and it's like, yeah, but she said it without saying it. It's like, she doesn't like Eonyu, but I doubt she just was curious, like, what are you doing? She doesn't like her, and even probably it's fine with like, oh, you go out there, get yourself killed, sure, fine. I want you dead, but I don't want to be directly responsible for killing you, so if you go out there and die on your own, sure, but I'm curious, like, how is it that you go off on your own and you manage to come back? Does seem like she isn't the same girl she was before. She's hardened after everything they've gone through, after everyone that they've lost. I mean, when you think about what that group was number wise and what it's been reduced to now, once again, it's just her, Seong. Oh, I don't think we saw her this episode, but Hyein, the lady with the dog, we ain't seen her since like the checkpoints last episode, I think. The with the screenings, I think that might have been the last time, like when they were rolling up to the screenings. I think that's the last time we saw Young and Miss Han. So there's only like 5 of them left after just everything they've been through. So the number's getting whittled down, and I think just after everything that happened, but it's also like the last person she was really connected to in this group was Jisoo. Like I said, there was a little bit of a love-hate relationship there. And it was like, you were kind of my frenemy, and you're gone now, and that's upsetting. So all she has to hold on now to is her brother, the belief that her brother's still out there. So I think all that hardened her. So she does seem quick on her feet, and she's a lot more like gung-ho to fight. But yeah, they followed her and were planning on killing her, which is idiotic. And then you have June-il going off on his own, but we'll get... Well, it all ties in, so I'll go ahead and talk about it. He wanders off on his own, and he finds this little girl, and I'm like, what's her deal? Why is she just sleeping out, like, in the ground out in the open? And then, like, the moment he touches her, her eyes open and they turn white. I'm like, yo! As we saw, in episode 2, Xion does that, and it allowed him to kind of connect with a monster, and more specific, like tie into like their memories. He got to see it, but they also got to see it too. And June-il just kind of like stands there, and he's stuck in a trance, and she's like, it's not my fault, it's your fault. And she even seems to be wearing gloves, so she can't touch people. It's not something she can even actively control. It's just, it happens on all the time, I guess. Like if you touch her skin directly, it automatically happens, or if she touches you. So I think that's interesting, because like I said, we know that Hyun's the only one we're aware of that has that ability. But her being... I'm like, that's not... The entire time we were seeing that little girl, I'm like, that's not Yi Kyung's daughter, is it? Because we never found out what kid she was having, whether it was like a little girl or little boy. But I'm like... Because the opening once again revolves around a child, and it was in the opening credits. It is like the silhouette of a little girl, so it probably is Yi Kyung's daughter. But it's like, where's Yi Kyung? Did she die? Like that's the thing of like jumping into a time skip like this, because there's so many questions. But it also seemed like as she was walking away, June-il his skin started boiling and bubbling, and I'm like, what does that mean? So it seems like based on her interaction with the other two later on, she can cause the monsterization in people. It doesn't seem like it goes to the full effects, but I guess she can almost... I guess maybe she's almost like a physical representation of how the whole thing works. It's supposed to be driven by desires. So it seems like she's able to kind of bring that to the forefront, your desires, and monsterize you without immediately having to go through the traditional like symptoms you go through. Because I guess that's the build up to it. It's like a longer process, but in her case, maybe she can instantaneous like monsterize you to some extent. Or maybe it's just a mind control, whatever the case may be. Because the later guy was kind of like, ugh, like he was a monster, but he was saying like, oh, I want, like he's driven by his desires. And I assume he killed the other guy. To be fair, the guy was a dick and ended up shooting him in the head. I was like, oh, Because at first I was like, well, the little girl manipulated him into saying, like, I'm a monster. And he's like, oh, well, good. Because the guy was getting on his nerves. It's like, we got food, we got some supplies, let's go on back. The whole point was we wanted to search the surface, so, like, go out here on our own so we can get food. Got enough, and he still is like, no, we're going to go kill that late. I guess because, hey, we owe so much to Chief G, and the fact that she's a good person, and this terrible person, Eon Yu, ended up killing her husband. Because it wasn't just Chief G who ran the place. It seemed like Gi Nam, they ran it together, I think, as a couple. So it's like you besmirch like the good. Like, I wonder if they were part of the group that was there first before the crows and the other group of survivors showed up, type of thing. So maybe that's why they're even more being like, hey, we're on Chief G's side. When Chief G started to go work on the wall, she ended up bringing Siongo along, which no one thought she would, considering like her ties to Eon Yu, who they call her like an evil witch. But he was able to work it because he wants to. The more work you do, very specific job you do, the more you get paid, and that's how this whole system runs. And so does June Il's mom. She wants to go as well, but she seems to be using it as an excuse to run off on her own. And she ends up stepping on a mine. And it turns out her whole deal was she wanted to disappear. She's like, I wanted to go off and quietly disappear rather than just like dying in front of my son, just waiting for death. And she thought she was prepared for it. But now in this moment, standing on this mine, this Claymore mine or whatever, it's like, no, it's definitely not Claymore. It's just it's a landmine. Because I think the Claymores are the ones that just stick up. They're like a little rectangle thing that's on a stand. I think those specifically are Claymores. I think landmines and Claymores are two separate things. I'm ignorant, so do forgive me. But she's about to. She's scared now. It is that thing of now that when death approaches, you think you're so ready, but you're not. And Chan Young wants to help her, but he doesn't want to leave her side. She's like, just go. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of my selfishness. And then in the process of helping her, her nose starts bleeding. So the monsterization has happened. Process has started. But Chan Young doesn't want to leave her side. And Sergeant Tak shows up, and he actually helps out with the situation. The mine will go off if she shifts her way. It's like, maybe it's a dud, maybe it's not. They also don't know the blast radius, so it could all be for naught. But for Chan Young, it's like, yeah, but you're saying there might not be a chance, but you saying there might not be a chance means there is a chance. So using a car, they drive it over the mine to kind of compensate for her weight, but it misses the mine. But luckily they were able to get her off of it. But it seems like, oh, maybe it was a dud, but it explodes anyway. So luckily they weren't too close by. What's also sad too, because she was telling Chan Young, if I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to June Il, I don't want him to think I abandoned him, so I need you to tell him like what happened. Tell him I said goodbye. But he's like, no, you're going to tell him yourself. Which we don't know what June Il's situation is after this episode, like whether he went full monsterization. I mean, his mom's already kind of begun the process, so maybe he's even further along because that little girl's circumstances made that the case. Either way, it seems tragic all around, and like that storyline is not going to have a happy ending, sadly. We also catch up with the military in regard to those who are out searching, the unexplored areas. Obviously, the one leading the charge is Sergeant Kim. He seems to have evened out since in the time skip, because it seems like some other guy amongst their group kind of fills that role, because he was kind of like the asshole for the past 3 episodes, and now it seems like, well, last episode he kind of, yeah, he had his issues with Sergeant Tak, but it seemed like he was able to bury that. I mean, he did actually help him when the Prime Minister was attacking him. So there seems to be some leeway in that regard, but it seems like someone else has filled that role. The guy that's like, oh, that guy's not here, we need to go find him, we can't leave. That guy seems so pushy. He seems a lot like Sergeant Kim was before, but I think, like I said, I think Sergeant Kim kind of even kiltered out a little bit. But yeah, they're exploring areas, and that particular soldier, he went off on his own because he was trying to get medical supplies for his girlfriend. That seems like that's one of those power trippy situations where she's not with him because she wants to be. She kind of has no choice. because when he tried to kiss her, what did she do? She turned her head the other way. He's like, oh, because it seems like she tries to placate him and keep him, because like, yeah, those two guys were running, that guy in particular was like running his mouth about the soldiers, and he was about to go after him, but she's like, no, let him say that, like, but not everyone feels that way. And he's like, oh, your arm, and she's like, don't worry about it, don't touch it. The fact of the matter is everyone's going through it, because everyone's got to go through their test of, hey, you cut me, I'm bleeding, and it hasn't healed immediately, so I haven't gone through the monsterization process. I don't know, I could be misreading that situation, but like the way she was around that soldier made it seem like she was kind of happy to be away from him. And even later on, she's on her own. Her name's like Jin Ah, and the preacher guy walks by her like, oh, we all have our own duties, don't we? And I'm like, is she supposed to be like, sadly, is she sadly in a situation where she kind of has to placate him and serve him? Like, it don't seem like a good thing. That's why I was also like bringing up the whole power tripping. There would have been other instances, but that felt like that was a soldier taking care of, like, not taking care of someone, but like using his power to kind of force someone into a situation. It feels icky like that. Could be misreading that, but it felt off. Like, especially when she was like, oh, kind of don't kiss me, turn my head, and just, it feels like he's the one that's like, oh, we're in a relationship, and she doesn't. It doesn't seem receptive. It doesn't seem reciprocal to me. We'll see. Because especially the guy that was talking to Sergeant Kim was like, yo, everyone's in a relationship except you. Like, come on. I mean, hey, he's like, you're a handsome guy. Fact of the matter is, you're a 10 considering everything going on. So, everyone has someone. Why haven't you? But he's like, no, I like being single. So, I'm curious to see more about that storyline, especially because the guy's off on his own. One guy didn't want to leave him behind, but Sergeant Kim's like, no, if he's all right, he'll find his way back to us, or we'll come back out and look for him. But the shelter takes precedent, because the whole situation with Junil's mom, Chan Young, and Sergeant Tak ended up, that explosion drew their attention, so they're going back to the shelter. Granted, I'm curious how they're going to feel about, Sergeant Tak going out of his way to protect a lady that's already started a monsterization process. She's like, I mean, he might have even gotten injured in the process, and it's like, you did all that for someone that was already pretty much as good as dead. Well, because they run into a monster in this episode, but it's a level green. Those who don't bother. So I guess these were the only 3 levels from the research and stuff, because we know red and yellow. Red was purely, well, we don't, I guess yellow is mild, obviously, in the grand scheme of things. Red is driven completely insane by blood, and they're willing to kind of go super, I guess any monster that's willing to go full aggro falls into that category. But greens just kind of do their own thing. They're so wrapped up in their desire. As long as you don't bother them, they won't bother you. They don't really immediately go in attack mode. So the lady in the wedding dress and stuff, because she was after a particular ring, I guess maybe she's, because of her desire to get married, because she wasn't able to, and her monsterization, because she's also in this in-between space of, she might not be full monsterized, because they're like, oh, she has human eyes, because like half her face was monsterized, but the other half looked like normal human eyes. So either she's still in that in-between state, or I don't know. Because some monsterizations have gone, like, obviously full monsterization, that they don't even look like human anymore. They look humanoid, but the monsterization is fully taking them over. In her case, it just seems like she's still humanoid enough, but who knows. But finally, we have this situation with Eon Yu when she was running away from those guys after her. Sadly, she ends up finding herself in that area and gets attacked by monsters, fending for herself until she gets cornered, and then all of a sudden someone shows up to save her, and they dash away, and she's looking at the door, and you can see it's kind of burning, like it was slashed by something extremely hot. Like I said, I'm betting on Hume, but she's like, oh, it's you, brother. I know it's you. Don't hide from me. Come out. Like, when you saved me all that time ago, I figured it had to be you. So please show your face to me, because we have no idea how long ago the Ki Nam situation and her went down where she got rescued. Like, we don't know how long ago that was in comparison to present time. But then, lo and behold, she runs into the little girl at the end of the episode. So how that's going to turn out, we'll ultimately have to wait to see, but I'm excited to find out everything. Like I said, I don't think Hyun's out, because even if he was, like, how would anyone, because no one knows to go looking for him. That was the reason why Woon Young left him there in particular. It's like, right, no one's going to come and rescue you. Because I thought someone would stumble across him just because maybe they were scouring the area just for supplies and then come across him. Not unless he somehow did manage to get free, or someone did free him some time ago and he is just out and about doing his thing. I have no idea. Not unless he's just scout. Because why would he stay in a generally same area enough that she'd be able to track him down? Because the thing that was kind of tied around her head, the red ribbon, which also the little girl has it as well. Not unless Yi Kyung ended up finding Hyun and all three of them are together. Like, not unless Yi Kyung is still alive and she's out and about and her daughter's just kind of doing her own thing and maybe Hyun's with them. Not unless that's the correlation. Because of the red thing that was tied around her hand all that time ago, she associates, oh, I found these red bandanas kind of, or cloth tied around stuff. It's got to be my brother, but like I said, I think it's Hyun, but she also seems to have it too. So they could all be a group, or I don't know. That's just pure speculation on my part, because like, why would she specifically have that too? Because it was most likely her laying down the markers. Maybe it's kind of supposed to be a sign, if it's Yi Kyung, that, hey, you shouldn't go beyond this place. Like I said, that's theories on my part. Won't know till we get to the next episode, but I'm excited to see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.